morning, Jose. We're going to start with today's class, and we're going to start with this theme to remember a little bit of persuasive essay. Okay, so what's the purpose of persuasion? All right, so the purpose of persuasive essay is to get someone to do something or change someone's mind. So we want to make them think how we think. We want to change their opinion about something. That's the whole point of persuasive essay. Let's see. We will persuade the reader. We persuade the reader by providing evidence. This means that we can introduce some facts from researches and investigations, articles, books, etc. So always remember, we have to provide evidence. So how do we get the reader interested in when we start reading or writing, the persuasive essay with an amazing fact? We have to show many emotions. We also have to entertain the story. And we should have like a challenging question. So this will be considered maybe hooked. And obviously that's very important and should be stated at the beginning of the set in the introductory paragraph, right? That's very important to start to writing the persuasive essay. All right, so the introduction, like we mentioned before, it's a paragraph which is going to state the your opinion about this topic. Is going to state it should introduce a hook, something interesting for the reader to get interest in reading your story or your essay. Also a thesis statement, right? And this thesis statement is your argument, right? So what do you think about and what's your opinion towards that topic, that specific topic? So that's your argument, that's your thesis statement. no? What you want to write. All right, so you must make sure you write in a tone that sounds well informed. This means that you should have at least read information about this online or in articles, that you know what's up to this specific topic in nowadays. So you definitely have to sound that you feel or that you are very sure what you're writing about. So you should feel confident with what you're writing about. So in a way that you can explain not all these things that are important for you to convince. So you should definitely read some information related to your topic. All right, so the best thing to do with arguments against your case is to say why they're wrong. Remember, I mentioned there is this one paragraph that you don't necessarily have to write it, but it's interesting when people do because um, it's in this paragraph you can mention what is being said about your topic, but that you know people have that opinion towards that beforehand you decided to explain or talk about your topic. So for example, let's continue with the same example. Dogs are better than cats, and you want to mention 3 reasons why you think that's real. So you know that people say, oh, dogs are very, they need a lot of, they need a lot of time, or you need to sorry, what's the word? So you need to invest a lot of time in your dog's um, entertainment. You have to walk them a lot. Um, you have to spend money on treats. Sometimes dogs don't behave as you want to. You have to pay money, maybe to a trainer, a dog's trainer. No, and people sometimes think that it might be a little bit time consuming. So, um, so you can say, well, a lot of people says, or the common idea related with dogs being better than cats is that dogs are high maintenance. That's the word. They're very high maintenance. So let me write that for you. So because people know that, a lot of people tend to think, oh, well, I don't want a dog because I don't want a dog because it takes too much time to take care. So, so yeah. So you mentioned that you say, okay, people said that, but it's not true actually, and then you start explaining. No, that's not true. So that's the paragraph or the argument against your case, against your opinion, no, against what you are stating. So um, it's a good way. It's a good option to write this paragraph. Um, but you have to be careful with the information you write about. No? All right. So which word will not be acceptable in a formal essay? We have want because it has a contraction. And I mentioned before that for academic writing, we don't use contractions. So the correct word the correct way, sorry, to mention this, to write want is will not, without the contraction. And it's always like that with academic or formal writing or formal essay. So that's something important to mention. Actually, I'm going to explain that today. So please keep that on mind. All right. So choose the best way of stating your argument. Chocolate is a sweet temptation. The other options are not good because it says many will say, no, we don't care about many. We should not eat so much. Again, we don't care about we. No, you're talking about your opinion. Chocolate, who hasn't eaten too much at some time? No, it's too personal. And this one has the wrong subject. Many or we. It just you're just talking about your topic, which is chocolate. Chocolate is a sweet temptation, so you just need to be a little bit more formal. All right. So when you quote an expert or article, you must acknowledge your source. Yes, this is very important. It's not that like in Spanish formal or academic documents where you have to write um, the source in a very specific way. For instance, author, um, year, and I think sometimes you write the page. No? You don't do that in English, no? But you should at least mention who wrote that, or what's the name of the article, or where you found that. Because you can pretend something you found online, it's yours idea. So that's why it's important to acknowledge your source. All right, so how should you not start your sexy paragraph? I think that no, it's a different to say in my opinion or this in my personal opinion, blah blah blah. So it's good to at some point describe that it's your point of view, but not to start with that. Not to start. I think that because also it's very common. It's not. It doesn't sound academic at all, and yeah. All right. So how many ideas should you present when we are talking about the body of the text? Yes, three should be the top because when it's too long, then it's too much information for the reader to understand. And when it's too long, it's not there are not enough ideas. So at least three supporting ideas are ideal. Right. So you could choose to add a final paragraph to your argument, which now we know that a final paragraph is a conclusion paragraph. The last one, it's always conclusion or summary type of paragraph. So obviously it's going to tie all your ideas up together. And that means that if you started talking about your topic and then you describe three main ideas, points, subtopics about your topic, at the end you should try to go to something specific again. So put all the ideas together. Nice. So your conclusion should restate your main ideas. So for example, you said dogs are better than cats. At the end of this last paragraph, your conclusion paragraph should restate. You should say the same thing, that dogs are better than cats, but in a different way, in trying to introduce these other characteristics or ideas you mentioned about it. So you mention your thesis argument one more time. All right, your essay will be memorable if you use impressive vocabulary. Yes, it's important, especially try to don't use very common words such as and, but, because. No, try to use linking words. Yes, making the reader laugh will create a connection with them. Finish with a memorable sentence. Yes. So it's important to start with a very strong introductory paragraph. Remember the hook too. We should mention that, but also it's important to finish very strong too. So it's memorable. Memorable, it means that you won't forget. So that's very, very important with persuasive essay, because you're trying to convince the other person. So it should be memorable. And finally, all right, and last one, your argument works best if you link each paragraph to the next. Link each paragraph to the next. That means that you should always try to follow a connection between all the ideas. Obviously, everything is talking about the same topic, but you should try to create that connection. Your ideas should always be organized in order from the most important to the least important, and we should always keep the same tone, sorry, and while you're writing your whole article or your whole essay. And the same tone means that, for example, you are using certain type of words, no, try to use the same type of words all over. And also maybe you're trying to have a more reflexive, persuasive essay, so try to use those type of questions or phrases, not all over the paragraph. No? And so it's always, obviously it's important that it's all connected. No? So that will be it. This first part of the class. So let me show now. The best right. Your persuasive essay. Right, let me close this, please. All right. So in these tips and improvements, I'm going to explain some important tips to consider while you are writing academic essays. Now we're talking about persuasive essays. So it's important that be direct in your writing. No, a good writing is clear and concise. So that means that your ideas should be go to the point, should go. So if there are any filler words are words that are unnecessarily to be there, or there are maybe some adverbs that shouldn't be there, or phrases, and just take it out, erase it, delete it, and because it's not always important to have a lot of words in your essay. It's better to be more clear and say exactly what you mean in the most direct way. But obviously, you shouldn't be like, you shouldn't sound um, too um, too direct, or or maybe mm, that you're not showing or explaining enough your ideas with examples or information that is necessarily. But you should always try to um, describe what you want. But if it's too long, try to review it, and you should just not try to summarize your idea. The next tip will be to be very careful with what words you're using. So it's to be wisely, no? We can say the same exact idea in, I don't know, in at least 3 to 5 different sentences, and we should have to uh, we should think um, we should think in our readers um, understanding, no. Let's try to put ourselves in the reader's shoes. So by that I mean that we should try to maybe, obviously we want to sound academic and formal, but if there are words that might not be known, or they are like very rare, we should try to use easier words, right? Um, if you don't, if you're not sure about a word and maybe you want to read a different one, you can always use a treasures, or try to find for synonymous. I'm not sure if you can see these options, but when you click right on your mouse, at least in Docs or PowerPoint, you get to choose um, synonymous, or different words basically say the same thing, right? So as you can see here, no, for this word, it's mentioning, no, arguments, what words are similar in meaning to argument, lyrics, languages, and for example, you want to write here wisely. You want to use this word in a different way in treasures. You can find it, and here it's telling you what type of word it is. It's an adverb. This is describing an action. So there are other words you can use instead of wisely: intelligently, and sagely, consciously, knowledge. Um, no, there are many different. So when you're not sure about what to write, you can click on the right and then go to treasures. Um, and in that way, you will get this information. Most of the um, tools online that where you can write, they have this option. And yep, Basically that. Um, so you can choose the best word that you need. All right. Next tip. Always short sentences are more powerful than long sentences. Remember I mentioned before, 3 to 5 ideas per paragraph is more than enough. Um, why? Because when we write a very long paragraph, um, one, it's too much information for the reader, and they might get bored to read that. Maybe we have the information and maybe it's not very organized. No, we have to be clear. Remember that was tip one, clear and concise. So um, we should always try to shorten shorten our paragraphs because in that way it will be easier for the reader to comprehend uh, what we're explaining. Because if it's too long, you will lose your reader. He will lose interest in reading the whole article because they will get tired of reading. So we have to try to avoid to pack too much information in one line. No? Every sentence should contain one thought or idea. One sentence should be that, unless you want to add add information, you want to add an example, or you want to describe um, the opposite idea of that. No? But a sentence should be a complete idea of something, and the next sentence it's another one, right? So we shouldn't. You should always try to have 5 sentences, I would say, um, tops in a paragraph, and so that at least 5 different sentences, right? The next topic is to try to write short paragraphs. Again, this is just trying to be considerate with your reader. Um, Also, the information you're writing, you should always just write the most important things about your topics, subtopics. Because if you put just way too much information, it will be confusing for the reader. And academic topic, it's basically that, no? Short paragraphs. And all right, so in this formal writing, we have paragraphs, shorter paragraphs. So obviously here we're talking about um, persuasive essay, even though this topic or this type of writing is considered formal, it's not the most formal one, right? Because you're not necessarily introducing other people's works, right? Um, you definitely uh, introduce or mention some information maybe you found in other sources, but obviously it's not the most formal type of writing. Now remember, I'm gonna go back to this chart 1 second. I remember I mentioned there are at least in this course we're talking about 2 different um, essays. We have persuasive essay and argumentative essay. In persuasive essay, even though it's considered a little bit formal, argumentative essay it's the most formal. Here you're definitely looking information online, you're presenting it in many different ways, you're showing a lot of maybe articles, books, information, research, etc. And most of your document is going to be showing that information from other people. That's why it's longer than persuasive essay. Persuasive is less formal than argumentative essay. So it's shorter. It should be shorter than the previous one, than the argumentative essay, right? It's just a little bit less formal because this is related with emotions, opinions, right? Um, so the next topic is always use the active voice. So the active voice is the way that we talk. So we usually have a subject, we have a person, and we have an action. We have an action, sorry, then we have an object who's receiving the action. So this is the most common way to talk. So Sally drove off, drove her car off the road. Or the dog bit Timmy on the arm. Or my friend um, read many articles about dogs. You know, this is the normal voice we use. Passive voice is the opposite. No, we have an object in the passive voice who's doing an action, and then at the end we have a person or a subject who did that. But obviously here we care mostly about the whole um, the object, no, or who's receiving the action. We don't really care about the person, so about we care about the object, and that's why it's different. It's not the same saying Sally drove her car off the road than saying the car was driving off the road by Sally. This is active voice, this is passive voice. Same thing here. The dog bit Timmy on the arm than saying Timmy was bitten on the arm by the dog. So in this type of writing, we use the active. We always use the active voice because this is the most direct way to write, to go to a point. All right, so next tip. We have to always review and edit your work. Usually when we write, we are going to write many times, and while you write, you're going to want to change some words. You're going to review maybe your sentences, your ideas, and we should always review, and be reviewing and working on it. So, for example, the first time you write, and let me show you your document. All right, so the first time you write about this paragraph, well, this persuasive essay about narco traffic, it didn't look like this, right? We introduced some tips, some improvements that we can change, right? So we should always be reviewing writing. So maybe you realize, oh, I'm using this word way too many times. So you can change it. So you can go and try to find synonymous or other words that best explain that. No? So we keep reviewing and reviewing until you're happy with it. So that's why this topic was talking about that. No? Review and edit your work. We have to correct it as many times as it needs to, and we should check always word choice. We can change the words that we use. Also the structure. If you realize that maybe we have way too many ideas, we can erase, we can move some of these ideas. and try to have a voice and a style while you're writing. So the more you write, the more you will see that, how, your own style while you're writing. So that's what's important. Next topic, and yes, and final one, um, it's to use natural conversation tone. So imagine that you're writing for a friend, and you want to sound unique. Not right. Don't try to copy other people's style, even though it could give you like a good um inspire you to write in certain way. No, you should always try to write in your own way. No, obviously, if there are words that maybe you don't know, or maybe you want to use a different word, you can always look up look it up. But um, you should write like you talk, like you have conversation with someone. So when you talk, when you're explaining something, usually we start from the most bigger idea, and then we start getting more specific. No? But try to use this tone, this conversation, and it's unique as the way you are. You are unique, and your writing is unique. Your way of speaking is unique, and the way you move, or you walk, you run, you you wear your clothes, right? Everything with you it's unique. So this very this original part of you should be shown in your writing. Also, try to shape ideas with your original thoughts and voice. Um, so there are ways that we can maybe describe some things, but in a very original way. For example, you're talking about dogs and cats, and maybe you found out this very unique um, article. They describe dogs, and they mention something that you never heard before. You can try to introduce this as something interesting, no? So yeah, and like I mentioned, this is very original. So your writing style should reflect your own personality. All right, so sorry. So and finally, we should try to follow um, outlined when we write, because this gives us the opportunity to organize our ideas before we start writing. So instead of start writing, no, we should start thinking about what hook you're going to use, and what information you can give if it's necessarily, and focus on your thesis statement. So this is what you want to say. So the example that we've using it's dogs are better than cats. No, that's an example of thesis, or this is a statement. Then you have to think of your three arguments, right? Why you are saying, for example, dogs are better than cats. And you should have a topic sentence explaining your point and reason. And you could, this is not mandatory, but you can or could use something related with the opposite idea of what you're explaining, and then go back to your point and saying, well, people think this about dogs, but actually it's not true, and then go back and say, okay, well, actually this is true. And then this clincher, it's like connecting your your previous idea to the next one. And it's also considered like a closing idea, closing statement or sentence, right? And that's usually the how we should organize each paragraph, right? Remember, we should have 3 to 5 ideas or sentences for each paragraph. And at the end, we can, this is optional. No, you don't have to, but it's very recommended that you mentioned the opposite view of your topic. Oh no, it's not true. Dogs are not better than cats because it's expensive to have dogs, for example. So you say, okay, people said it's being said that having dogs, um, having a dog, it's expensive. It is expensive. So you say, well, that's not actually true. The amount of money you spend per dog, it's cheaper than with a cat, for example, no? And then you say, well, this is the reason why dogs are better. No? And this is, again, this is optional, no? And well, at the end, you should always summarize your main points or reasons, your arguments. You should restate your thesis statement. You should mention again, dogs are better than cats, but in a different way, obviously. And a personal comment or call to action. No? And this is important in persuasive essay because you're having a connection with your reader, right? And like we mentioned before, we should always try to show some emotions. You can make the reader laugh. You can try to create a connection with them, because remember, we have to be memorable when we persuasive essay, because you're trying to convince the reader that this idea, for example, dogs are better than cats, is true, and you want to convince them, right? And that's why it's important, to follow this sort of ideas or organization, because it will create a very strong persuasive essay. So, well, we are going to well, you should finish. Let me show you your essay. No, for tomorrow, the short one, like I mentioned before, and the same outline that I showed before, I copy and pasted here. No, the one that we were just talking about is here in the docs, so you can have a better idea how to organize your paragraphs. So please write this for tomorrow so we can review this before I give you your final essay. Now your final essay is going to be just a little bit longer. You should You can use any of these writings that you already used to base your final essay. That it could be this one or the one you're going to write. But the final essay, um, should have this, no, a persuasive essay style. You have to be careful or introduce the correct spelling and punctuation rules. And the minimum number of words is 200 to 250 words. That's the final essay. But please don't forget to work on this 100 essay word first. And obviously remember, you can use any of those to use your final essay. All right. So that will be it for today's class. Thank you very much. Please let me know if you have any questions. And have a great day. All right. Thank you.